When a pregnant woman arrives at James Kellerman's ranch in a shipping crate payment for a dead man's gambling debt, the lonely cowboy discovers she's carrying the very gift he desperately prayed for under the desert. Stars. But when her past comes riding hard across the Arizona territory with guns drawn, will their newfound family survive the reckoning that threatens to tear them apart forever? The wagon wheel hit another rock, and Elena felt her whole body shake inside the wooden box. She pressed her hands against her belly, trying to calm the baby that kicked and moved like it knew something bad was happening. The summer heat of 1,867 made the small space feel like an oven, and sweat dripped down her face as the wagon rolled through the Arizona territory. "Easy there, boys," called the driver to his horses. "We're almost to the Double J Ranch." Elena's heart pounded faster. Ranch. That meant cowboys, and cowboys meant trouble for a woman like her. She closed her eyes and remembered 3 days ago when everything changed. She had been sewing a dress for Mrs. Rodriguez when the men came to her little house in Tucson. "Your husband owed money," the fat man with the mustache had said. "Now, you're going to pay it back." "But Roberto is dead," Elena had cried. "I don't have his gambling debts." "You are the debt," the man had laughed. "Pack your things. You're going to Arizona." Now here she was, bouncing around in a box like a sack of flour. The baby kicked again, and Elena whispered, "It's okay, little one. Mama will protect you." The wagon started to slow down. Elena heard boots hitting the ground and men talking in low voices. Through the tiny gaps in the wood, she could see the orange and red sky that meant the sun was setting. Somewhere, a horse made a soft noise. "Where do you want this, Mr. Kellerman?" the driver asked. "Right here is fine," came a deep voice that sounded tired. "What exactly did Martinez send me?" Elena's blood turned cold. Martinez was the fat man who had taken her away. She remembered his cruel smile and the way he had laughed when she begged him to let her stay in Tucson. "He said it was payment for what he owed you," the driver answered. "Something about a poker game last month." Elena heard footsteps coming closer, heavy boots on dirt. She held her breath and tried to make herself smaller in the box. "A poker game?" the tired voice said. "I don't remember Martinez owing me anything big enough to send a freight wagon." "Well, he paid for the shipping," the driver said. "That's all I know. Good luck, Mr. Kellerman." The wagon started moving again, getting farther away. Elena was alone now, with this Mr. Kellerman person. She could hear him walking around the box, his spurs making tiny ringing sounds with each step. "What in the world did that fool send me?" he said to himself. Elena heard the sound of metal on wood. He was trying to open the box. Her heart beat so fast she thought it might jump out of her chest. What would he do when he saw her? Would he be angry? Would he send her back to Martinez? The sound of breaking wood filled the air. Light started coming through the cracks. Elena squeezed her eyes shut and wished she could disappear. "Well, I'll be damned," the man said softly. Elena opened her eyes and looked up. Standing above her was a tall man with brown hair and kind blue eyes. His face was tan from working in the sun, and he had lines around his eyes that came from squinting. He was holding a crowbar in one hand, but he didn't look mean. He looked surprised. "Ma'am," he said, taking off his hat. "Are you hurt?" Elena couldn't speak. She just stared at him, waiting for him to yell or grab her. But he didn't. Instead, he put the crowbar down and held out his hand to her. "I'm James Kellerman," he said. "This is my ranch. Can you tell me your name?" "Elena," she whispered. Her voice sounded strange after being quiet for so long. "Elena," he repeated, like he was tasting the word. "That's a pretty name. Can you stand up? You must be sore from that long ride." Elena looked at his hand. It was big and rough from working, but it looked gentle too. Slowly, she reached out and let him help her stand up. Her legs felt shaky, like a newborn colt. "Easy now," James said, keeping his hand on her arm. "When's the last time you ate something?" Elena thought about it. "Yesterday morning, I think." James's face got angry, but not at her. "Martinez," he said like it was a bad word. "Come on, let's get you inside. You need food and rest." He helped her walk toward a house made of brown mud bricks and wood. It had a covered porch with 2 chairs and looked comfortable. Elena had never seen a house like it before. "Mr. Kellerman," she said as they walked slowly up the steps, "I need to tell you something." "What's that?" he asked, opening the wooden door. "I'm going to have a baby," Elena said, "in about 2 months." James stopped walking. He looked at her belly, then at her face. "I can see that," he said quietly. "Does that change anything?" Elena didn't understand. "Change what?" "Whether you're welcome here," James said. "Because you are, both of you." The inside of the house was cool and dark. Elena saw a kitchen with a big wooden table, chairs, and a stove. Everything was clean but looked lonely, like no one had been happy here for a long time. "Sit down," James said, pulling out a chair. "I'll make you something to eat." Elena sat down carefully. Her back hurt from being in the box for so long. She watched James move around the kitchen, getting bread and meat and cheese. His hands were gentle as he cut the food, like he was used to taking care of things. "Mr. Kellerman," she said, "why are you being nice to me?" James stopped cutting and looked at her. "What do you mean?" "Martinez said I was payment for a debt. That makes me property, like a cow or a horse." James's face got red with anger. "No person is property," he said firmly. "I don't care what Martinez told you. You're a human being, and you deserve to be treated like one." Elena felt tears start to come. She had been so scared for so long, and now this stranger was being kind to her. "I don't have anywhere else to go," she said. "Then stay here," James said, "as long as you want." "But I can't pay you anything," Elena said. "I don't have money." James put a plate of food in front of her. "I'm not asking for money. I'm asking for company. This place has been too quiet for too long." Elena looked around the kitchen again. Now she could see what made it feel lonely. There were no woman's things anywhere. No pretty dishes or flowers or curtains. Just the basic things a man needed to live. "Your wife?" she asked quietly. James's face got sad. "She died 3 years ago. Her and our baby." "I'm sorry," Elena said. She meant it. She knew what it felt like to lose someone you loved. "Mary would have liked you," James said. "She always said this house needed children's laughter." Elena ate the food slowly. It was the best thing she had tasted in days. "Mr. Kellerman, can I ask you something?" "James," he said. "Just call me James." "James," Elena said, trying out the name. "What did you wish for when you were alone here?" James looked surprised by the question. He was quiet for a long time, staring out the window at the desert. "I wished for a family," he said finally. "Someone to share this life with, someone to care about." Elena felt the baby kick inside her. "Maybe wishes come true in strange ways," she said. James looked at her, and Elena saw something change in his eyes. Hope, maybe, or the beginning of something that could grow into love. "Maybe they do," he said softly. Outside, the sun finished setting, and the desert got quiet. Elena felt safe for the first time in weeks. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but tonight she had food, shelter, and a kind man who treated her like a person instead of property. As she finished eating, Elena wondered if James really meant what he said about her staying. And if he did, what would happen when the baby came? Would he still want them around when life got harder? The rooster crowed just as the sun painted the sky pink and orange. Elena woke up in the softest bed she had ever slept in, with clean sheets that smelled like soap and sunshine. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then she remembered the box, the kind cowboy, the promise of safety. She got up slowly and looked out the window. James was already outside, feeding the horses. He moved with the easy grace of a man who had done this work his whole life. Elena watched him scratch a big brown horse behind the ears, and the horse pushed its nose against his shoulder, like they were old friends. "Good morning," James called when he saw her in the window. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in months," Elena called back. It was true. She had slept without fear for the first time since Roberto died. Elena got dressed and went to the kitchen. James had left coffee warming on the stove and fresh eggs in a basket. She looked around, wondering if she should cook breakfast or wait for him to come back. "Go ahead and make yourself at home," James said, coming through the door. "I've got to ride out to check the cattle, but I'll be back by noon." "Can I cook for you?" Elena asked. I'm a good cook. James smiled, and it changed his whole face. I'd like that very much. Elena started making breakfast, eggs and bacon and fresh bread. As she worked, she hummed a song her mother had taught her. The kitchen felt different, with someone cooking in it. Warmer, more alive. That's a pretty song, James said, sitting at the table. What's it about? It's about a bird who finds a new home, Elena said, flipping the eggs. My mother sang it to me when I was little. Where's your mother now? James asked. Elena's face got sad. She died when I was 16. My father too. That's why I married Roberto so young. I needed someone to take care of me. James was quiet for a moment. What was Roberto like? He asked. Elena brought the food to the table. He was handsome and funny. He made me laugh. But he had a sickness. What kind of sickness? Gambling, Elena said. He couldn't stop, even when we had no money for food. He always said the next game would make us rich. James ate his breakfast slowly, thinking, how did he die? A man shot him in a card game, Elena said. Roberto was cheating, and the man caught him. After that, Martinez came to collect his debts. And he decided you were part of the payment, James said angrily. He said Roberto had promised me if he couldn't pay, Elena said. I don't know if it was true. Roberto might have done it when he was drunk. James pushed his plate away. That doesn't make it right. Elena looked at him carefully. James, why do you care so much about what happens to me? You don't even know me. James was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, because I know what it's like to lose everything. When Mary died, I wanted to die too. If someone had shown me kindness then, it might have saved me years of pain. What was Mary like? Elena asked. James's eyes got soft. She was small and blonde, with a laugh like music. She could make flowers grow in the desert. She loved this place, even when it was hard living. She sounds wonderful, Elena said. She was, James said. But she's gone, and I'm still here. Maybe God sent you to help me remember how to live again. Elena felt her cheeks get warm. I'm not Mary. No, James said. You're Elena, and that's enough. After breakfast, James showed Elena around the ranch. It was bigger than she had thought. Hundreds of acres of desert land with cattle scattered across it like brown dots. There was a barn, a chicken coop, and a vegetable garden that looked like it needed work. Mary planted that garden, James said. I've tried to keep it going, but I'm not good with plants. Elena looked at the wilted vegetables and dried out soil. It needs water and love, she said. Maybe I could help. I'd like that, James said. It would be nice to have fresh vegetables again. They walked back to the house as the sun got higher. Elena felt the baby kick and put her hand on her belly. James noticed and looked worried. Are you okay? He asked. The baby is just active today, Elena said. It happens sometimes. When exactly is it due? James asked. Elena thought about it. Late August, maybe early September. It's hard to tell exactly. James nodded. We'll need to get Doc Henderson out here before then. He delivered half the babies in the territory. You would do that for me? Elena asked. Of course, James said. I told you. You're welcome here. They spent the morning working together. Elena started fixing the garden while James repaired a fence. It felt natural, like they had been doing this for years instead of just one day. Around noon, they heard horses coming up the road. James stopped working and walked to the front of the house. Elena followed, feeling nervous. 3 men on horseback rode into the yard. They were dusty and tired looking, with guns on their hips. Elena recognized the leader immediately. It was Martinez. Kellerman, Martinez called out. We need to talk. James walked forward, his hand near his gun. What do you want, Martinez? I want to check on my property, Martinez said, looking at Elena. Make sure you're taking good care of it. Elena felt sick. She stepped behind James, using him as a shield. She's not property, James said firmly. She's a person. Martinez laughed. A person? She's a pregnant Mexican woman with no money and no family. That makes her useful, not a person. Get off my land, James said. His voice was quiet but dangerous. Not until I see how she's doing, Martinez said. He got off his horse and walked toward Elena. Come here, girl. Let me look at you. No, Elena said, staying behind James. I said, come here, Martinez said louder. And I said, get off my land, James said. His hand moved to his gun. Martinez's men moved their hands to their guns too. Elena realized they were about to have a fight, and it would be her fault. Please, she said, I'll go with him. I don't want anyone to get hurt. You're not going anywhere, James said without looking back at her. Listen to the girl, Martinez said. She knows where she belongs. She belongs wherever she wants to be, James said, and she wants to be here. Martinez's face got red with anger. You can't steal another man's property and expect no consequences. I'm not stealing anything, James said. I'm protecting someone who needs protection. The two men stared at each other. Elena could feel the tension like electricity in the air. Then Martinez smiled, but it wasn't a nice smile. You're making a mistake, Kellerman, he said. That woman is trouble. She killed her husband as sure as if she pulled the trigger herself. That's not true, Elena said. Isn't it? Martinez said. Roberto started gambling heavy after you got pregnant. He was trying to make enough money to take care of you and the baby. If you hadn't been so expensive, he'd still be alive. Elena felt like she had been slapped. Was it true? Had Roberto died because of her? Don't listen to him, James said. He's trying to hurt you. Am I? Martinez said. Ask her how much money Roberto lost trying to keep her happy. Ask her how many times he came home drunk and angry because he couldn't provide for his family. Elena remembered those nights. Roberto stumbling in, smelling like whiskey and failure. The way he would look at her belly with fear instead of joy. Maybe Martinez was right. Maybe it was her fault. Elena, James said gently, look at me. She looked up at him, tears in her eyes. It's not your fault, James said. A man's choices are his own. Martinez mounted his horse. We'll see about that, Kellerman. This isn't over. As the three men rode away, Elena sank into one of the porch chairs. The baby kicked hard, like it could sense her distress. Was he right? She asked James. Did I kill Roberto? James knelt beside her chair. No, he said firmly. Roberto made his own choices. You didn't force him to gamble. But he was trying to take care of us, Elena said. There are lots of ways to take care of a family, James said. Gambling isn't one of them. Elena looked at this kind man who had shown her nothing but respect and care. Why do you want to help me, James? Really? James stood up and looked out at the desert. Because 3 years ago, I prayed for God to take me too. I didn't want to live without Mary. But I'm still here, and maybe that means I'm supposed to help someone else live. Elena felt something warm grow in her chest. Not love, not yet, but the beginning of something that could become love. What if Martinez comes back? She asked. James looked at her with steady blue eyes. Then, I'll be ready for him. As the sun reached its highest point in the sky, Elena realized her life had changed again. But this time, maybe the change was for the better. She had found a man who saw her as a person, not property. A man who would protect her and her baby. But she also knew Martinez wouldn't give up easily. He would be back, and when he came, would James really be ready to fight for her? Thunder crashed overhead like God himself was angry, and Elena bolted upright in bed as rain hammered against the windows. Lightning lit up the dark room for just a second, showing her the truth she had been hiding from James for 2 weeks now, blood on the white sheets beneath her. She pressed both hands to her belly, feeling the baby move restlessly inside her. Something was wrong. The cramping had started yesterday, but she had told herself it was normal. Now, with the storm raging outside and pain shooting through her back, Elena knew she couldn't pretend anymore. James, she called out, trying not to panic. His boots thundered down the hallway. He appeared in the doorway wearing only his pants, his hair messy from sleep. What's wrong? The baby, Elena whispered. I think something's happening. James lit the oil lamp with shaking hands. When he saw the blood, his face went white. How long has this been going on? Since yesterday, Elena admitted. But it's getting worse. Another crash of thunder shook the house. James ran to the window and looked out at the storm. Doc Henderson lives 20 miles away. In this weather, it would take hours to get him here. Elena doubled over as another wave of pain hit her. James, I'm scared. He sat on the edge of the bed and took her hand. We're going to figure this out. Tell me exactly what you're feeling. Sharp pains in my back, Elena said, and the baby isn't moving as much as usual. James thought for a moment. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, helped deliver babies in China before she came here. She lives only 5 miles away. In this storm? Elena asked. I'll ride fast, James said, already putting on his shirt. Can you hang on until I get back? Elena nodded, though she wasn't sure. The pain was getting stronger, and she felt dizzy. What if the baby comes while you're gone? James kissed her forehead. It won't. This baby is tough, just like its mother. He wrapped himself in a heavy coat and ran outside into the storm. Elena heard his horse's hooves disappearing into the night, and suddenly she was alone with her fear and the baby that might be dying inside her. The next hour felt like the longest of Elena's life. She walked around the house, trying to ease the pain in her back. She made tea with shaking hands and tried to remember what her mother had told her about childbirth. But her mother had died giving birth to Elena's baby brother, and that memory didn't help at all. Lightning flashed again, and Elena saw something that made her heart stop. Through the kitchen window, she could see 3 men on horseback riding toward the house. Even in the storm, she recognized Martinez's big shape on his black horse. Elena blew out all the lamps and crawled to the window. The men stopped in front of the house, rain pouring off their hats. They were talking, but she couldn't hear what they were saying over the thunder. Martinez got off his horse and walked to the front door. He knocked hard, rattling the wood. Open up, Elena. I know you're in there. Elena held her breath and stayed perfectly still. Another pain shot through her belly, and she bit her lip to keep from crying out. The cowboy ain't here, one of Martinez's men called out. I saw him ride out an hour ago. Perfect, Martinez said. Elena, open this door or we'll break it down. Elena knew the door was strong, but not strong enough to keep out 3 determined men. She looked around desperately for somewhere to hide. The baby kicked weakly, and Elena whispered, Hold on, little one. Just hold on. Martinez tried the door handle. When it didn't open, he stepped back and kicked it hard. The wood cracked, but held. On the second kick, the door burst open with a loud crash. There you are, Martinez said, stepping into the dark house. Water dripped from his clothes onto the wooden floor. Did you really think you could hide from me? Elena stood up slowly, one hand on her belly and one hand on the kitchen table for support. Get out of my house. Your house? Martinez laughed. This isn't your house, girl. You're still my property, and I'm taking you back to Tucson tonight. I'm not going anywhere, Elena said, especially not in this storm. Martinez's eyes narrowed as he looked at her more closely. What's wrong with you? You look sick. I'm fine, Elena lied. You don't look fine, Martinez said, stepping closer. You look like you're about to drop that baby right here on the floor. Elena backed away from him, but there was nowhere to go. The kitchen table was behind her, and Martinez was blocking the way to the rest of the house. Please, Elena said, if you ever had any respect for Roberto, leave me alone. I need help, not trouble. Roberto was a fool, Martinez said, and you're the reason he's dead. Coming with me is the least you can do to make up for it. Another pain hit Elena, stronger than before. She couldn't hide it this time. She gasped and doubled over, gripping the table so hard her knuckles turned white. Well, Martinez said, looks like this baby wants to come tonight. That makes things more interesting. What do you mean? Elena asked, though she was afraid to know. I mean, a baby changes your value, Martinez said. A woman with a child is worth more to certain people, especially if it's a healthy child. Elena realized with horror what he was suggesting. You want to sell my baby? I want to sell both of you, Martinez said. There are men in Mexico who pay good money for women who can cook and clean and take care of children. Your baby would just be extra profit. Elena felt sick, and not just from the pain. You're talking about slavery. I'm talking about business, Martinez said. Now come on. My men have a wagon waiting down the road. No, Elena said firmly. I won't go with you. Martinez pulled out his gun. You don't have a choice. Just then, they heard horses approaching through the storm. Martinez cursed and looked out the window. "That must be your cowboy friend." Elena's heart leaped with hope, but Martinez quickly dashed it. "Carlos," he called to one of his men, "take position behind the barn. When Kellerman gets off his horse, shoot him." "No," Elena screamed. "Don't hurt him." "Then come with me quietly," Martinez said. "Right now, before he gets here." Elena looked toward the door, knowing James was riding into a trap. If she went with Martinez, James might live. If she stayed, Martinez would kill him for sure. "I'll go," Elena said. "But promise me you won't hurt James." "I promise," Martinez said, but Elena could tell he was lying. Through the rain, Elena could hear James's voice calling out, "Elena, I brought help!" Martinez grabbed Elena's arm and started pulling her toward the door. As they stepped outside, Elena saw James riding up with a small Chinese woman behind him on the horse. Mrs. Chen had come to help deliver the baby. "James!" Elena called out. "It's a trap!" James looked up and saw Martinez holding Elena. His hand went immediately to his gun, but Martinez was faster. "Don't move, Kellerman," Martinez shouted. "I've got men positioned around your ranch. One wrong move and you're dead." James slowly raised his hands, but Elena could see he was thinking, planning. Mrs. Chen slipped off the horse and crouched low, trying to stay out of sight. "Let her go, Martinez," James said. "She needs medical help." "She'll get help in Mexico," Martinez said, "after I sell her to the highest bidder." Elena felt another strong contraction. The baby was definitely coming, whether anyone was ready or not. She looked at James, trying to tell him with her eyes that she was sorry for bringing this trouble to his peaceful ranch. But James wasn't looking at her like she was trouble. He was looking at her like she was the most important thing in the world, and he would do anything to protect her. "Elena," James said quietly, "when I say run, you drop down and get behind that water trough." Elena nodded slightly. She could see Mrs. Chen moving carefully toward the house, staying in the shadows. Lightning flashed again, and in that bright moment, everything happened at once. James threw himself sideways off his horse, rolling behind a fence post. Elena dropped to the ground and crawled toward the water trough. Martinez fired his gun, but the bullet went wide. "Kill him!" Martinez shouted to his hidden men. But as more gunshots rang out in the storm, Elena realized that James had been ready for this fight. He had positioned himself perfectly, and he was shooting back with deadly accuracy. Elena made it behind the water trough just as another contraction hit her. This one was so strong she couldn't help crying out. The baby was coming tonight, in the middle of a gunfight, whether she was ready or not. Mrs. Chen appeared beside her like a ghost. "I help you," she said in broken English. "Baby coming now?" Elena nodded, tears mixing with rain on her face. Around them, the battle for her life and freedom raged on. But all Elena could think about was the baby that was fighting to be born. The gunfire stopped as suddenly as it had started, leaving only the sound of rain and Elena's heavy breathing behind the water trough. Mrs. Chen knelt beside her, feeling Elena's forehead with gentle, experienced hands. "Baby coming very soon," Mrs. Chen whispered. "We need to get inside, away from danger." Elena tried to see what was happening in the yard. Two of Martinez's men lay still in the mud, but she couldn't see Martinez or James. Fear gripped her heart tighter than any contraction. "James?" she called out softly. "I'm here," his voice came from somewhere near the barn. "Stay down. Martinez is still out there." Mrs. Chen helped Elena stand up slowly. "We go to house now. Baby not wait for fighting to stop." They made it halfway to the broken front door when Martinez stepped out from behind Elena's favorite apple tree. His clothes were torn and bloody, and his face was twisted with rage. "You killed my men," he snarled at James, who was now visible near the barn. "They chose their side," James replied, his gun still in his hand. "Now it's time for you to choose yours." Martinez looked at Elena, who was leaning heavily on Mrs. Chen. "You really think this gringo will take care of you? He'll get tired of you just like Roberto did." "Roberto never got tired of me," Elena said through gritted teeth. "He got tired of losing." "Same thing," Martinez said. He raised his gun toward Elena. "If I can't have you, nobody can." Time slowed down like honey dripping from a spoon. Elena saw Martinez's finger tighten on the trigger. She saw James start to move from his position by the barn, but he was too far away. She saw Mrs. Chen step in front of her, even though the tiny woman couldn't possibly stop a bullet. Then Elena felt the strongest contraction yet, and as she doubled over in pain, Martinez's shot went over her head. The baby had saved her life by demanding to be born at exactly the right moment. James didn't waste the opportunity. His gun fired once, and Martinez fell backward into the mud, clutching his shoulder. "It's over," James said, walking toward them with his gun still ready. "Elena, are you hit?" "No, but the baby is coming right now," Elena gasped. "Mrs. Chen says we need to get inside." James scooped Elena up in his arms like she weighed nothing and carried her into the house. Mrs. Chen followed, already giving orders in her calm, sure voice. "Put her on bed. Get clean sheets, hot water, sharp knife. Baby coming fast now." For the next hour, the house became a place of life instead of death. Elena labored with Mrs. Chen, coaching her in a mixture of English and Chinese, while James boiled water and tore clean sheets into strips. Outside, Martinez groaned and cursed from where he lay wounded in the mud, but nobody paid him any attention. "I can see baby's head," Mrs. Chen announced. "Elena, you push now. Push hard." Elena bore down with all her strength, thinking about James's kindness, about the safe home he had offered her, about the new life she was bringing into the world. She pushed for her baby, for herself, and for the future she was finally brave enough to want. "Almost there," Mrs. Chen said. "One more big push." Elena gathered every bit of strength she had left and pushed harder than she ever had in her life. Suddenly, she felt the baby slip free, and Mrs. Chen was holding a tiny, perfect little girl who immediately started crying at the top of her lungs. "She's beautiful," James said, his voice full of wonder. "Elena, she's perfect." Mrs. Chen cleaned the baby and wrapped her in a soft blanket. Then she placed the little girl in Elena's arms, and Elena felt her heart expand to hold more love than she thought possible. The baby had dark hair like Elena's, and blue eyes like. Elena looked up at James in surprise. The baby's eyes were exactly the same shade of blue as his. "James," Elena said quietly, "I need to tell you something." But before she could speak, they heard horses outside. James looked out the window and saw 6 men in badges riding up to the house. "Sheriff's here," James said. "Someone must have heard the gunshots." The sheriff, a big man with gray hair and a serious face, knocked on the doorframe since the door was still broken. "Kellerman, we heard there was trouble out here." "Come in, Sheriff Watson," James said. "Martinez tried to kidnap Elena. He's outside with a bullet in his shoulder." Sheriff Watson looked around the house, at the blood on Elena's sheets, at the newborn baby, at the broken door and bullet holes in the walls. "Looks like you had quite a night." "Elena just gave birth," James explained. "This is Mrs. Chen. She helped deliver the baby." The sheriff tipped his hat to both women. "Ma'am, Mrs. Chen." Then he looked at Elena more closely. "Aren't you the woman Martinez claimed was his property?" Elena's heart sank. Was the sheriff going to side with Martinez? "I'm not anybody's property," Elena said firmly, holding her baby closer. "That's right," Sheriff Watson said. "I looked into Martinez's claims after he came to my office last week. Turns out there's no legal document saying you belong to him, just his word against yours." Elena felt relief wash over her like cool water. "So I'm free?" "You were always free," the sheriff said. "Martinez has been running a slavery operation disguised as debt collection. We've been trying to catch him for months." James sat down on the edge of the bed and looked at Elena and the baby. "What will happen to Martinez?" "He'll go to prison for a long time," Sheriff Watson said. "Attempted kidnapping, operating a slavery ring, attempted murder. He won't bother anyone again." Mrs. Chen finished cleaning up and started packing her things. "Baby is healthy. Mother is strong. I go home now." "Thank you," Elena said. "You saved our lives." Mrs. Chen smiled and patted Elena's hand. "You very brave woman. Baby lucky to have you." After the sheriff left with Martinez and Mrs. Chen went home, the house became quiet except for the baby's soft breathing. Elena looked down at her daughter, then up at James. Her eyes, Elena said, they're just like yours. James had been thinking the same thing. Elena, when exactly was this baby conceived? Elena's cheeks turned red. Do you remember that night in March when you came to Tucson to buy supplies? You stayed at the hotel near the market? James nodded slowly. I remember. There was a pretty woman in the cantina who looked sad. We talked for hours about her husband, who was always gambling. That was me, Elena said. Roberto had lost our rent money again, and I was so angry and lonely. You were kind to me, and one thing led to another. James stared at her. This baby is mine? I think so, Elena said. The timing is right. And look at her eyes. James reached out and gently touched the baby's tiny hand. She wrapped her fingers around his, and he felt his heart fill with joy he hadn't experienced since Mary died. What's her name? James asked. Elena had been thinking about this for months. Hope, she said, because you gave me hope when I had none left. James leaned down and kissed Elena's forehead, then placed a gentle kiss on Hope's head. Hope Kellerman, he said. I like the sound of that. Elena looked up at him in surprise. Kellerman? If you'll have me, James said. I want to marry you, Elena. I want to be Hope's father and your husband. I want us to be a real family. Elena felt tears of happiness on her cheeks. Are you sure? We haven't known each other very long. I've known you long enough to know you're brave and kind and strong, James said. And I've loved you since the moment I saw you in that crate, even if I didn't realize it then. Elena thought about the long, hard road that had brought her to this moment. The pain of losing Roberto, the terror of Martinez, the fear of being alone with a baby. All of it had led her to James, and to this perfect little house where she could build a new life. Yes, she said, I'll marry you. As the storm outside finally passed and the sun began to rise, Elena realized that sometimes the worst things that happen to you can lead to the best things. She had been shipped across the territory like cargo, but she had found a man who saw her true worth. Hope yawned and settled deeper into sleep, safe in her mother's arms, and Elena knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together as a family. But as she drifted off to sleep herself, Elena wondered if their troubles were really over. Martinez was gone, but there were other people in the world who might not approve of a Mexican woman marrying a white cowboy. Would their love be strong enough to overcome whatever society threw at them? The church bells in Bitter Creek rang out like gunshots across the desert, and Elena's hands shook as she held the letter that had arrived that morning. 3 months had passed since Hope's birth, 3 months of happiness with James, but now everything was about to change again. What does it say? James asked, bouncing Hope gently in his arms while she gurgled and reached for his mustache. Elena's voice trembled as she read. It's from Roberto's family in Mexico. They say they have legal rights to Hope because she was born during my marriage to Roberto. They're coming to take her away. James stopped bouncing Hope and stared at Elena. Legal rights? That's impossible. According to Mexican law, any child born to a married woman belongs to the husband's family if the husband dies, Elena explained, even if the husband isn't the real father. James felt his world tilting sideways. After losing Mary and their baby, he had finally found happiness again with Elena and Hope. The thought of losing them was like a knife in his chest. When are they coming? He asked. The letter is already 2 weeks old, Elena said. They could be here any day. James handed Hope back to Elena and started pacing around their small living room. In the 3 months since their wedding, they had made the house into a real home. Elena's colorful blankets covered the chairs. Her herbs grew in pots on the windowsills, and Hope's cradle sat next to their bed where they could hear her breathing at night. We could run, James said. Take Hope and go to California. Start over where nobody knows us. Elena shook her head. Roberto's brother, Diego, is very powerful in Mexico. He has connections everywhere. He would find us eventually. Hope started fussing, sensing the tension in the room. Elena bounced her and hummed the lullaby her mother had taught her, but even that couldn't calm the baby today. There has to be something we can do, James said. Some legal way to fight this. Against Mexican law? Elena asked. James, you don't understand how these things work. In Mexico, women have very few rights. Diego could claim Hope, and there would be nothing I could do to stop him. James knelt beside Elena's chair and took her free hand. I won't let anyone take our daughter away. She's not legally your daughter, Elena said sadly. According to the law, she belongs to Roberto's family. The law is wrong, James said fiercely. Hope is ours. We're the ones who love her and take care of her. Just then, they heard the sound of many horses approaching. James went to the window and cursed under his breath. A group of 8 men was riding toward the house, led by a man who looked like an older, meaner version of Roberto. That must be Diego, Elena whispered, joining James at the window. He looks just like Roberto, but without the kindness. James checked his guns and made sure they were loaded. Stay inside with Hope. Don't come out no matter what happens. James, you can't fight 8 men, Elena said. Watch me, James replied grimly. He stepped out onto the porch as the riders stopped in front of the house. Diego dismounted and walked forward with the confidence of a man who was used to getting his way. He was dressed in expensive clothes and wore gold rings on his fingers. You must be Kellerman, Diego said in accented English. I am Diego Vasquez, Roberto's brother. I know who you are, James said. What do you want? I want my niece, Diego said simply. Roberto's child belongs with his family. Hope belongs with her mother, James said. Diego laughed. Her mother has no rights. In Mexico, children belong to the father's family. Since Roberto is dead, the child comes to me. We're not in Mexico, James pointed out. We're in Arizona territory, and here, children stay with their mothers. Ah, but you see, Diego said, pulling out some papers. I have obtained custody documents from the Mexican government. They are recognized by the territorial court in Tucson. James felt his heart sink, but he kept his face calm. Let me see those papers. Diego handed them over with a smug smile. James couldn't read Spanish very well, but he could see official seals and signatures. They looked real. Even if these are legal, James said, Hope isn't Roberto's child. Of course she is, Diego said. She was born to Roberto's wife. That makes her Roberto's child under the law. Not if Roberto wasn't the father, James said. Diego's eyes narrowed. What are you saying? I'm saying Hope is my daughter, James said clearly. Elena and I were together before Roberto died. Hope is mine by blood. Diego studied James's face, looking for signs of lying. You have proof of this? Look at her, James said. She has my eyes, my nose. She looks nothing like Roberto. Babies change, Diego said dismissively. Besides, it doesn't matter who the real father is. What matters is who the legal father is. Elena appeared in the doorway, holding Hope. The baby was awake now, looking around with her bright blue eyes at all the strange men. Diego, Elena said quietly, I know you loved Roberto, but taking Hope won't bring him back. Diego's face softened slightly when he saw his dead brother's wife. Elena, you look well. Motherhood agrees with you. Thank you, Elena said. Hope is a good baby. She's happy here. She will be happy with me too, Diego said. I can give her things you cannot. Education, money, a proper upbringing with her own people. Her own people are here, Elena said, moving to stand beside James. We are her family. Diego's men were getting restless. One of them, a young man with cruel eyes, spoke up. Enough talking, Diego. Take the child and let's go. Patience, Miguel, Diego said. This is a delicate matter. James saw an opportunity. Diego, you seem like a reasonable man. What if we could prove that Hope isn't Roberto's daughter? Would you give up your claim then? Diego considered this. How could you prove such a thing? There are doctors who can tell by looking at a child's features, James said. Scientific methods. It wasn't entirely true, but James was buying time, hoping to think of a solution. Interesting, Diego said. But even if the child is not Roberto's by blood, she is still Roberto's by law. Elena was married to my brother when the child was born. Elena stepped forward, still holding Hope. Diego, there's something you should know about Roberto's death. What do you mean? Diego asked. He wasn't just gambling, Elena said. He was selling information to Apache raiders. That's why someone shot him. He was a traitor. Diego's face went white with shock. That's impossible. Roberto was many things, but he was not a traitor. Ask Sheriff Watson in town, Elena said. He has the evidence. Roberto was telling the Apaches which ranches had money and which ones were poorly defended. People died because of what Roberto did. James stared at Elena in surprise. This was the first he had heard of this, but Elena's face was completely serious. You're lying, Diego said, but his voice shook. I wish I was, Elena said. I found papers in Roberto's things after he died. Letters from Apache leaders, payments for information. I gave them to the sheriff. One of Diego's men whispered something in Spanish to another. James couldn't understand the words, but he could tell they were shocked by what Elena had said. Even if this is true, Diego said, it doesn't change the law. The child still belongs to Roberto's family. Actually, it does change things, came a new voice from behind them. Everyone turned to see Sheriff Watson riding up with two deputies. James felt a wave of relief. Elena must have sent word to the sheriff somehow. Sheriff, James said. Good to see you. Kellerman? The sheriff nodded. Mr. Vasquez, I believe we need to have a conversation about your brother's activities before his death. Diego's face was now pale as desert sand. What activities? Treason against the United States, Sheriff Watson said simply. Roberto Vasquez was working with hostile Apache bands to raid American settlements. Under territorial law, any property or family connections of a traitor are forfeit to the state. Diego stared at the sheriff. You cannot prove this. Actually, I can, Sheriff Watson said, pulling out a folder of papers. We found Roberto's correspondence with Apache war chief Cochise. He was paid $50 for every successful raid he helped plan. Elena closed her eyes, as if the truth about her dead husband still caused her pain. James put his arm around her shoulders, supporting her. This means, Sheriff Watson continued, that any legal claims Roberto's family might have had to his wife or children are void. Elena is free to marry whomever she chooses, and her children belong to her and her current husband. Diego looked like he had been punched in the stomach. But the custody papers are meaningless, Sheriff Watson said. The Mexican government issued them based on false information. Roberto Vasquez died a traitor to both countries. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Hope made a small cooing sound and reached for James's face. He took her from Elena and held her close, feeling like he could breathe again. I think it's time for you gentlemen to head back to Mexico, Sheriff Watson said, and I'd suggest you don't come back to Arizona territory. Diego mounted his horse slowly, looking older than he had when he arrived. Elena, he said, if what you say about Roberto is true, then I owe you an apology. I thought I was protecting my brother's child. You were trying to do what you thought was right, Elena said gently, but Hope belongs here, with people who love her. As Diego and his men rode away, James, Elena, and Hope stood together on their porch, watching the dust settle. Sheriff Watson tipped his hat and followed the Mexicans to make sure they left the territory. Is it really over? James asked. It's really over, Elena said. Hope is ours forever. James looked down at his daughter, who was now sleeping peacefully in his arms. Elena, was all that true about Roberto being a traitor? Elena was quiet for a moment. Some of it, she said finally. Roberto did have connections with some bad people, but I may have exaggerated a little to protect our family. James smiled. Remind me never to get on your bad side. As the sun set over their ranch, the three of them went inside to the home they had built together. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight they were together, and that was all that mattered. 6 months after Diego's visit, Elena stood in the general store in Bitter Creek, trying to ignore the whispers of the three women standing near the fabric counter. Hope sat contentedly in a basket at Elena's feet, playing with a wooden rattle James had carved for her. I heard she tricked that poor cowboy into marrying her, one woman said, in a voice loud enough for Elena to hear. Probably told him the baby was his when it wasn't. Mexican women are known for their tricks, another woman added. My husband says we shouldn't trust any of them. Elena's cheeks burned, but she continued looking at the supplies she needed. She had learned to expect this kind of talk in town. Some people would never accept a Mexican woman married to a white rancher, no matter how happy they were together. "Mrs. Kellerman," called Mr. Patterson, the store owner. "Your order is ready." Elena walked to the counter, keeping her head high. Mr. Patterson was one of the few people in town who treated her with respect. "Thank you, Mr. Patterson," Elena said, counting out her money. "How's that little one doing?" Mr. Patterson asked, smiling at Hope. "She's growing fast." "She's perfect," Elena said proudly. "James says she's going to be tall like him." Behind her, Elena heard one of the women make a disgusted sound. "Mixing races never leads to anything good," the woman muttered. Elena turned around to face the three women. They were all wives of local ranchers, dressed in their Sunday best, even though it was Wednesday. "Excuse me," Elena said politely. "Did you have something you wanted to say to me directly?" The leader of the group, Mrs. Hartford, lifted her chin defiantly. "As a matter of fact, I do. Some of us are concerned about the influence your kind might have on our community." "My kind?" Elena asked. "Foreigners," Mrs. Hartford said. "People who don't share our values." Elena felt anger rising in her chest, but she kept her voice calm. "What values are those, Mrs. Hartford?" "Christian values," Mrs. Hartford said. "American values. The importance of staying with your own kind." "I am a Christian," Elena said. "I go to church every Sunday, and I'm working to become an American citizen." "Going through the motions isn't the same as truly belonging," Mrs. Hartford said. "You'll always be an outsider here." Hope started fussing, sensing the tension. Elena picked her up and held her close. "My daughter was born here," Elena said. "This is her home." "That child is a reminder of what happens when people don't know their place," Mrs. Hartford said cruelly. That was too much for Elena. Hope is a beautiful, innocent baby who has done nothing wrong. If you have a problem with me, that's one thing. But don't you dare say anything bad about my child. Mr. Patterson stepped forward. "Ladies, I think this conversation has gone far enough. Mrs. Kellerman is a valued customer and a good woman." "You would defend her," Mrs. Hartford said to Mr. Patterson. "Everyone knows you're soft on foreigners." "I'm not soft on anyone," Mr. Patterson said firmly. "I judge people by their actions, not by where they were born. And Mrs. Kellerman has never been anything but honest and kind in my store." Mrs. Hartford and her friends left in a huff, whispering to each other as they went. Elena stood at the counter, shaking with anger and hurt. "Don't let them get to you," Mr. Patterson said gently. "There are plenty of good people in this town who don't think like that." "Sometimes it doesn't feel that way," Elena said. "Change takes time, Mr. Patterson said. "When I first came here 20 years ago, people didn't trust me because I was from back east. Now look at me. I'm practically part of the furniture." Elena smiled a little at that. "Thank you for standing up for me." "It was the right thing to do," Mr. Patterson said. Elena loaded her supplies into the wagon and drove home, thinking about Mrs. Hartford's words. Was she really an outsider? Would Hope face the same prejudice when she got older? When she reached the ranch, Elena found James working in the barn with a young Apache man she had never seen before. The man looked to be about 20 years old, with long black hair and traditional clothes mixed with some white man's clothing. "Elena," James called out when he saw her. "Come meet Joseph. He's going to be working for us." Elena climbed down from the wagon carefully, still holding Hope. The Apache man stepped forward and nodded respectfully. "Ma'am," Joseph said in perfect English, "Mr. Kellerman has told me good things about you." "Nice to meet you, Joseph," Elena said, though she felt nervous. After Roberto's involvement with hostile Apaches, she wasn't sure how she felt about having one living on their ranch. James seemed to understand her concern. "Joseph went to the mission school in Santa Fe. He's looking for honest work, and I need help with the cattle." "I understand your worry," Joseph said to Elena. "My people have not always been friends to Mexican settlers, but I am not my people. I am just a man looking for a chance to make an honest living." Elena studied his face. He seemed sincere, and James was a good judge of character. "What made you leave your tribe?" she asked. "The same thing that probably made you leave Mexico," Joseph said. "I wanted a different life than the one I was born into." Elena understood that feeling completely. How long have you been away from your people? 3 years? Joseph said. I've been working on ranches in New Mexico, learning the white man's ways. But I want to settle down somewhere. Maybe start a family of my own someday. James helped Elena unload the wagon while Joseph continued working on repairing a fence. As they carried supplies into the house, Elena told James about her encounter with Mrs. Hartford and her friends. I'm sorry that happened, James said. Some people in this town are stuck in the past. Mrs. Hartford said I'll always be an outsider, Elena said. Maybe she's right. James stopped carrying supplies and turned to face Elena. Do you feel like an outsider here? In our home? Elena looked around the kitchen they had made together. James's coffee cup sat next to hers on the table. Hope's toys were scattered on the floor. Elena's herbs hung drying from the ceiling beams. No, Elena said. Here I feel like I belong. Then that's all that matters, James said. The people who matter will accept you for who you are. The ones who don't accept you don't matter. Hope started crying, and Elena realized it was time for her afternoon feeding. As she sat in the rocking chair James had made for her, nursing their daughter, Elena thought about what it meant to belong somewhere. James, she said, do you think Joseph will have the same problems we do? Being accepted by the townspeople? James looked out the window at Joseph, who was working steadily on the fence. Probably worse, he said honestly. But maybe if people see him working hard and being honest, they'll start to change their minds. Like they might change their minds about me? Elena asked. Like they already are changing their minds about you, James said. Mr. Patterson isn't the only one who respects you. Doc Henderson always speaks well of you. Mrs. Chen considers you a friend. Even Sheriff Watson says you're one of the most courageous women he's ever met. Elena felt better hearing this. I want Hope to grow up in a place where she's accepted for who she is, not judged for what she looks like. She will, James said confidently. By the time she's old enough to understand prejudice, this territory will be full of people from all different backgrounds. She won't be unusual. She'll just be Hope. That evening, the three of them sat on the porch while Joseph made camp near the barn. Elena had invited him to eat supper with them, and she had been pleasantly surprised by his good manners and interesting stories about his travels. He seems like a good man, Elena said to James as they watched the stars come out. He reminds me of myself when I first came here, James said, just looking for a place to belong. Do you think we're building something good here? Elena asked. A place where different kinds of people can live together peacefully. James looked at Elena, then at Hope sleeping in her arms, then out at the desert that was slowly becoming home to people from many different places. I think we're building exactly what this territory needs, he said. A family that shows people it's possible to look past differences and see what really matters. Elena leaned against James's shoulder, feeling grateful for the life they had built together. It wasn't always easy, and there would always be people like Mrs. Hartford who couldn't accept change. But they had each other, and they had hope, and they were creating a home where love mattered more than the color of someone's skin or the place where they were born. As the night grew cooler, they went inside to their warm house, their sleeping daughter, and their dreams of a future where Hope would grow up free to be exactly who she was meant to be. But Elena couldn't shake the feeling that their biggest challenges were still ahead of them. Building a life together was one thing, but would the world around them ever truly accept the family they had created? Fire crackled and danced in the darkness as Elena woke to the smell of smoke and the sound of men shouting outside their bedroom window. Hope, now walking and talking at 18 months old, stood in her crib, pointing toward the orange glow that painted the walls. Mama, pretty lights, Hope said in her sweet baby voice. But Elena knew these weren't pretty lights. Someone had set their barn on fire. James! Elena shook her husband awake. The barn is burning. James bolted upright and looked out the window. The entire barn was covered in flames, and silhouettes of men on horseback were riding away in the distance. Get Hope and stay in the house, James said, pulling on his pants and boots. Lock the doors behind me. James, wait, Elena called, but he was already running outside. Elena quickly dressed and picked up Hope, who was now crying because of all the shouting. Through the window, Elena could see James and Joseph running toward the barn with buckets of water, but the fire was too big. They couldn't save it. The barn burned all night. By morning, nothing was left but black wood and ashes. 3 of their horses had died in the fire, along with most of their winter hay and farm tools. James stood in the ruins, his face covered with soot and his eyes red from smoke. Who would do this? Elena asked, joining him in what used to be their barn. Someone who wants us gone, James said grimly. Joseph walked up to them carrying something in his hands. Mr. Kellerman, I found this nailed to the fence post. It was a piece of paper with words cut out from newspapers and pasted together. Elena read it out loud. Mexicans and Indian lovers not welcome. Leave or face worse. Cowards, James said, crumpling up the paper. They won't even sign their real names. Elena felt sick to her stomach. This is because of me, isn't it? Because I'm Mexican. This is because some people are afraid of change, Joseph said. I've seen this before. When people feel threatened, they do terrible things. Hope toddled over to a piece of burnt wood and tried to pick it up. Elena quickly grabbed her before she could hurt herself. We should go to town, Elena said. Tell Sheriff Watson what happened. What good will that do? James asked bitterly. We don't know who did this. Could have been anyone. Or it could have been Mrs. Hartford's husband, Elena said. He never liked me coming to town. James looked at the destroyed barn, calculating how much money they had lost. It'll take months to rebuild this, and we don't have money for new horses right away. I have some money saved, Elena said, from selling my sewing work. That's your money, James said. You earned it. We're married, Elena said firmly. Your problems are my problems. Your ranch is my ranch. Joseph cleared his throat. If I may suggest something, Mr. Kellerman, my cousin Running Bear has a small herd of horses. He might be willing to trade them for cattle. Apache horses are strong and fast. James considered this. Would he deal with a white rancher? He would deal with a fair man, Joseph said. I've told him you treat me well. That means something to my people. Elena was surprised. I thought your people didn't trust whites. Most don't, Joseph admitted, but Running Bear believes the future means learning to live together, like what you and Mr. Kellerman are doing. Later that day, the 3 adults loaded Hope into the wagon and drove to town to report the fire. Sheriff Watson listened to their story and wrote everything down, but Elena could tell he didn't think he would catch whoever did it. I'll ask around, the sheriff promised. See if anyone saw anything suspicious last night. As they left the sheriff's office, Elena noticed more people than usual staring at them. Word about the fire had already spread through town. Let's get supplies and go home, James said quietly. But as they walked toward the general store, Mrs. Hartford stepped out of the dress shop and blocked their path. She was wearing a black dress and had a mean smile on her face. Well, well, Mrs. Hartford said. I heard you had some excitement at your ranch last night. If you call losing our barn and 3 horses exciting, James said coldly. Maybe it's a sign, Mrs. Hartford said. Maybe God is trying to tell you something. Elena felt anger building in her chest. What kind of sign would that be, Mrs. Hartford? That some marriages aren't meant to be, Mrs. Hartford said. That some people should stick with their own kind. James stepped closer to Mrs. Hartford. Are you saying you know something about our fire? I'm saying that when people go against nature, bad things happen, Mrs. Hartford said. Your wife brought trouble to this town the day she arrived. My wife has never hurt anyone, James said. She's a good Christian woman who works hard and minds her own business. She's a Mexican who married a white man, Mrs. Hartford said. That's against God's plan. Joseph had been standing quietly, but now he spoke up. Which Bible verse says people of different colors can't marry? He asked. Mrs. Hartford looked shocked that an Apache man had dared to speak to her. How dare you question me? I went to mission school, Joseph said calmly. I read the Bible every day. Jesus said to love your neighbor as yourself. He didn't say to love only the neighbors who look like you. Several people on the street had stopped to listen to this conversation. Elena could see them whispering to each other. The Bible also says wives should obey their husbands. Mrs. Hartford said to Elena, if you were a proper wife, you would convince your husband to move somewhere more appropriate. Arizona territory is appropriate for anyone who wants to work hard and build a good life, Elena said. That's what America is supposed to be about. America is for Americans, Mrs. Hartford said. I am an American, Elena said proudly. I became a citizen 6 months ago. This was news to several people listening, including Mrs. Hartford. Elena had studied hard and passed all the tests required for citizenship. Papers don't make you American, Mrs. Hartford said. Blood makes you American. Then what about Hope? Elena asked, holding her daughter closer. She was born here. She has American blood and Mexican blood. What does that make her? Mrs. Hartford looked at Hope, who was playing with Elena's hair and babbling happily. For a moment, her hard expression softened. Hope was an adorable child, and it was hard to hate an innocent baby. That child will have a hard life, Mrs. Hartford said finally. Neither side will fully accept her. Both sides will accept her, James said confidently, because she'll be raised to be proud of who she is. Just then, Mr. Patterson came out of his store. Mrs. Kellerman, I have those fabric samples you wanted to look at. Elena was grateful for the interruption. Thank you, Mr. Patterson. As they went into the store, Elena heard Mrs. Hartford talking to the people who had gathered on the street. She was telling them that the fire was probably started by Apache raiders, and that's what happened when people like the Kellermans encouraged Indians to live on white ranches. Inside the store, Mr. Patterson shook his head sadly. That woman has poison in her heart, he said. Don't let her words hurt you. Do you think she's right? Elena asked. Will Hope have a hard life because of who her parents are? Mr. Patterson thought about this seriously. Life is hard for everyone in some way, he said. But Hope will have something special. Parents who love each other and love her. That's worth more than having the right color skin. Elena bought fabric to make new curtains for their house. She was determined to rebuild and make their home even better than before. As they loaded their supplies into the wagon, Sheriff Watson approached them. I talked to some people, the sheriff said quietly. 3 men were seen riding toward your ranch last night around midnight, but nobody could identify them for sure. Any guesses? James asked. I have my suspicions, the sheriff said. But suspicions aren't proof. I'll keep investigating. On the drive home, Elena thought about Mrs. Hartford's words. Would Hope really face a hard life because she was mixed race? Elena had faced prejudice herself, but she had always hoped things would be different for her daughter. James, Elena said, do you ever regret marrying me? James pulled the wagon to a stop and turned to look at her. Why would you ask that? Because of all the trouble it's caused, Elena said. The fire, the cruel words, the way people treat us in town. Elena, James said, taking her hand, you and Hope are the best things that ever happened to me. I would rather face trouble with you than live peacefully without you. Hope clapped her hands and said, Papa, Mama, as if she understood they were talking about something important. Besides, James added with a smile, trouble makes life interesting. That evening, as they sat on their porch, looking at the charred remains of their barn, Elena felt a strange sense of peace. They had lost property, but they still had each other. They faced prejudice, but they also had friends like Mr. Patterson and allies like Sheriff Watson. Joseph came over from his small cabin carrying his guitar. Would you like me to play some music? He asked. It might help us feel better. That would be nice, Elena said. As Joseph played a gentle melody under the stars, Hope fell asleep in Elena's arms. The music was beautiful and sad, but also hopeful, like a promise that better days were coming. What's that song? Elena asked. It's an Apache lullaby, Joseph said. My mother used to sing it to me. It's about finding peace after a storm. Elena looked at James, who was holding her free hand and listening to the music. Tomorrow they would start rebuilding their barn. They would buy new horses and plant new crops. They would continue building their life together, no matter what obstacles people put in their way. But first, they would rest under the stars and remember that love was stronger than hate, and that home wasn't a building, it was the people who cared about each other. 2 years later, Elena stood in the same spot where their barn had burned, but now she was looking at a celebration that filled her heart with joy. The new barn was not only rebuilt, but bigger and better than before, and it was surrounded by neighbors from all over the territory who had come to help them celebrate the harvest festival. Hope, now 3 years old, ran between the adults carrying a small basket and collecting colorful fall leaves. Her long dark hair was braided with ribbons, and her blue eyes sparkled with excitement as she watched the older children play games. "Mama, look," Hope called, running to Elena with a bright red leaf. "It's pretty like your dress." Elena was wearing her finest red dress, the one she had sewn herself from fabric Mr. Patterson had ordered specially for her. She knelt down to Hope's level and admired the leaf. "It is beautiful, Mija," Elena said. "Just like you." James approached them carrying 2 cups of cider and wearing the biggest smile Elena had ever seen on his face. The ranch had become more successful than ever, partly because of their hard work and partly because other Mexican families had started settling in the area, creating a market for Elena's sewing and cooking. "Have you seen how many people came?" James asked Elena. "I count at least 50 families." Elena looked around at the crowd. There were white ranchers and their families, Mexican settlers, and even a few Apache families that Joseph had invited. Children of all colors were playing together while their parents shared food and stories. "Mrs. Patterson brought 3 pies," Elena said, "and the Chen family made enough dumplings to feed an army." "Speaking of the Chens," James said, "have you seen their new baby? He's got the loudest cry in the territory." Elena laughed. Mrs. Chen had given birth to a son just 2 months ago, and Elena had been there to help with the delivery, just as Mrs. Chen had helped when Hope was born. Joseph walked up to them leading a beautiful spotted horse. "Mr. Kellerman, I want you to meet Thunder. He's the newest addition to our herd." James examined the horse with an expert eye. "He's magnificent, Joseph. Your cousin Running Bear certainly knows how to breed horses." "Running Bear says he's proud to do business with an honorable man," Joseph said. "He also wanted me to give you this." Joseph handed James a beautifully crafted leather bridle decorated with silver and turquoise. "It's a gift to honor the friendship between our families." James was clearly moved by the gesture. "Please tell Running Bear I'm honored, and that he's welcome at our ranch anytime." Elena watched this exchange with warm feelings. The friendship between James and Joseph had grown strong over the past 2 years, and Joseph had become like a brother to both of them. He had his own small house on their land now, and he was courting a young Apache woman named Maria, who often came to visit. "Elena," called a familiar voice. Elena turned to see Mrs. Rodriguez, an older Mexican woman who had moved to the territory 6 months ago with her large family. "Mrs. Rodriguez," Elena said warmly, "how are you enjoying the festival?" "It's wonderful," Mrs. Rodriguez said. "My children have never seen anything like it. In Mexico, the different peoples don't usually celebrate together." Elena understood this completely. It took time for people here to get used to the idea too. "You and your husband have shown everyone that it's possible," Mrs. Rodriguez said. "My family is grateful to have such good examples to follow." As the day continued, Elena found herself moving through the crowd like a graceful dancer, speaking Spanish with the Mexican families, English with the white settlers, and even learning a few words of Apache from Joseph's friends. Hope stayed close to her side, absorbing everything with the natural curiosity of a child who had been raised to see diversity as normal. Around sunset, Sheriff Watson stood up on a wooden box and called for everyone's attention. "Folks, I have an announcement to make." The crowd gathered around him, curious to hear what he had to say. "As you all know," Sheriff Watson began, "this territory has been growing and changing rapidly. We've got people from many different backgrounds making their homes here, and for the most part, they've all been working together peacefully." Elena felt a flutter of nervousness. Where was this speech going? "However," the sheriff continued, "there have been some troublemakers who don't appreciate the harmony we've built. I'm happy to report that we've finally caught the men who burned down the Kellerman barn 2 years ago." A murmur went through the crowd. Elena grabbed James's hand, suddenly anxious. "It turns out," Sheriff Watson said, "the fire was set by 3 drifters who were passing through the territory. They had no connection to our community at all. They've been arrested and will face trial next month." Elena felt a huge weight lift from her shoulders. For 2 years, she had wondered if one of their neighbors had been responsible for the fire. Learning that it was strangers made her feel much better about the community they were building. There's more, Sheriff Watson said with a smile. The territorial governor has asked me to inform Mr. and Mrs. Kellerman that they've been selected to represent our district at the territorial capital next month. Their ranch has been chosen as an example of successful integration and cooperation between different cultural groups. The crowd burst into applause. Elena felt her cheeks turn red with embarrassment and pride. James squeezed her hand and whispered, "We did it, Elena. We really did it." Hope clapped her hands too, even though she didn't understand what was happening. "Mama famous!" she announced loudly, making everyone laugh. As the evening progressed and the celebration began to wind down, Elena found herself sitting on her porch with James and Hope, watching their guests gradually head home. Lanterns twinkled in the darkness, and the sound of laughter and conversation drifted across the desert. "Do you remember," James said quietly, "when you first arrived here in that crate?" Elena smiled at the memory. "I was so scared. I thought my life was over." "Instead, your real life was just beginning," James said. Hope, who was getting sleepy, climbed onto Elena's lap and curled up like a kitten. "Tell me story, Mama," she said. "What story would you like to hear?" Elena asked. "Story about the bird," Hope said. "The one Grandmama sang." Elena began humming the lullaby her mother had taught her, the one about a bird finding a new home. As she sang, she thought about how far they had all come. Joseph approached the porch carrying his guitar. "Mind if I join you? It's been a perfect day, but it's not quite over yet." "Of course," James said. "We were just thinking about how much has changed." Joseph sat on the porch steps and began playing a soft melody. "Change is like the seasons," he said thoughtfully. "Sometimes it's harsh like winter. Sometimes it's beautiful like spring, but it always keeps moving forward." Elena thought about Mrs. Hartford, who had moved away from the territory 6 months ago. Her husband had lost money in a bad cattle deal, and they had decided to try their luck in California. Before leaving, Mrs. Hartford had actually apologized to Elena for her cruel words. "I was afraid," Mrs. Hartford had said, "afraid that if too many things changed, I wouldn't know my place in the world anymore." Elena had forgiven her, understanding that fear could make people do and say terrible things. "Elena," James said, interrupting her thoughts, "there's something I've been wanting to ask you." "What's that?" Elena said, adjusting Hope's position as the little girl dozed in her arms. "How would you feel about giving Hope a little brother or sister?" James asked. Elena's heart jumped with joy. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" James grinned. "I'm saying I think our family isn't quite complete yet." Elena kissed him softly. "I think you're right." Joseph smiled and played a cheerful tune on his guitar. "Sounds like there's going to be even more celebrating in the future." As the stars came out and Hope fell completely asleep, Elena reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. She had started as someone else's property, shipped across the desert like cargo. Now she was a respected member of her community, a successful businesswoman, a beloved wife, and a proud mother. More importantly, she had learned that her worth wasn't determined by what other people thought of her, but by what she thought of herself and the love she shared with her family. The desert wind blew gently across the ranch, carrying the scent of sage and the promise of rain. In the distance, coyotes sang their evening song, and closer to home, the animals in the new barn settled down for the night. Elena looked at her sleeping daughter and thought about the world Hope was growing up in. It wasn't perfect. There would always be people like the old Mrs. Hartford who feared change and difference. But it was a world where a Mexican woman could marry a white cowboy, where an Apache man could be a trusted friend and business partner, and where children of all colors could play together without thinking twice about it. "James," Elena said softly, "do you think we've built something good here?" James looked out at their land, their animals, their home, and the community they had helped create. "I think we've built something better than good, Elena. I think we've built something beautiful." As they sat together under the vast Arizona sky, Elena knew that whatever challenges the future might bring, they would face them together. They had proven that love was stronger than prejudice, that determination was more powerful than fear, and that sometimes the most unexpected gifts came wrapped in the most difficult packages. Hope stirred in her sleep and murmured, "Mama, Papa, love you." And Elena knew that no matter what happened next, they had already won the most important victory of all. They had built a family based on love, respect, and the belief that every person had the right to choose their own destiny. The gift that had arrived in a wooden crate had turned into a legacy that would last for generations.